Hi everyone. So previously I gave you a homework that, create a list of integers the same way like we created a list of string. So in this tutorial, we are going to get started with that. I'm going to create a list of integers here and I'll tell you about a new function, which is isEmpty function. So this function is basically used to check whether a list is empty or not. So this function is going to return true if the list is empty, and it is going to return as false if the list is not empty. So what I have done here, I have created a list of integers. So instead of using string, I'm using integer here. So list of integer, and I'm naming it as numbers. So the name of the list is numbers. List of integer numbers is equal to new list of integer. So this is going to initialize my empty list. And then I'm displaying this empty list. And finally, I'm checking if the numbers list is empty or not by using the isEmpty function. Let's execute the code till here and let's see if it's working fine or not. Now, if you see, this is what I'm getting in the output. If I display the numbers list, it is coming as empty because this list does not have any value till now. And I'm displaying numbers list is empty. So numbers list is empty is equal to, and then numbers dot is empty. So isEmpty function is returning us true because this list is empty now. So when you will work on complex implementations, right, you will need to check whether the list is empty or not. And based on that, you need to execute some code or you need to skip some code. So we'll talk about all that in future tutorials. But for now, you just need to understand that the isEmpty function is going to return us true if the list is empty, and it is going to return us false if the list is not empty. After this, what we are doing, we are adding two numbers to our list. So we are adding an integer 1 and we are also adding an integer 2 to our list. And finally, we are displaying our whole list once again. And we are again checking if the numbers list is empty or not, and we are displaying the result. So this time, let's execute the whole code from top to bottom. So from here, I'm going to execute the whole code till here. Now let's see the output. If you see, initially our list was empty, and the isEmpty function was returning us true. Now I added two numbers to our list, 1 and 2, and now if I see, the list isEmpty function is going to return me false because now the list is not empty. So this is how our isEmpty function is working. Now I'm going to cover the code in this tutorial till this point, and I'm going to cover two concepts here. The first concept is that we can also define list using the array notation. Now let's talk about what is an array. So in general programming languages, an array is nothing but a collection of the values of same data type. So let's say I want to store 5 integers. I'm storing here 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6. Okay. So let's say I'm storing 6 integers here, and I can say this has an index 0, this has an index 1, this has an index 2, this has an index 3, this has an index 4, and this has an index 5. Now all these values are of the same data type. They are all integers, right? This is also an integer, this is also an integer, this is also an integer. Similarly, I can say all of the values are integer. Now, if we store all the values which are of same data type together in the memory, we call that an array. So what is an array? An array is nothing but a collection of values having the same data type stored together inside our memory. In Apex, we mainly have list. When we declare array in other programming languages, we use this square brackets to declare an array. Another property of an array is that it has a fixed size. So for example, if I'm saying that I want to declare an array of size 5, so it can only store 5 elements inside it because it has a fixed size that I have defined right here. But in Apex, we have the concept of list. And list doesn't have a fixed size, right? Because list can be expanded as we call the add function again and again. We have seen it previously, right? That in case I want to add elements to the list, I can call the add function and it will automatically expand. What we can do in Apex though, we can use the array notation to define a list. This means that although we are using the notation of an array right here, we are actually defining a list, and we can expand this list as well. We are defining a list here. So I'm saying string and then square brackets. So this is empty brackets, which is basically telling us that names is nothing but a array of string, or I can say a list of string, which is why I will define this empty brackets right here, is equal to new string. This is similar to list. And here I'm saying I want to have a list of 5 elements, right? So here I'm going to have a list like this, and it has the capacity to store 5 elements. just like an array. So if I want, I can increase the size of this list as well by using the add function. But as I have defined initially that I can store only 5 elements here, so I can initialize values to this list by using the indexes up till the index which can store the fifth element. So you know that the first element is going to have an index 0, second is going to have an index 1, third is going to have an index 2, fourth is going to have an index 3, right? And fifth element is going to have an index 4, which is why I can assign values till index 4 inside my list. If I try to assign a new value to index 5, that will not work because index 5 does not exist. Let's execute this code and let's see how it works. So I'm going to execute the whole code till here. And if you see, I'm saying here names array is equal to names array is equal to, this is nothing but a list. And it has 5 elements, Richard Hendricks at index 0, Alec Bachman at index 1, Kevin Belson at index 2, Monica at index 3, and Jared at index 4. This is how we have initialized the values right here. Now it doesn't matter in which order you are initializing the values. So for example, if I say that I want to initialize index 2 first, and then I want to initialize index 4, right? So I can do this as well because I have already allocated the memory for 5 elements that I want to store inside my list. So this is also work fine. If you see, the order is still the same. So Richard Hendricks is still at index 0, and Kevin Belson is still at index 2. Alec Bachman is still at index 1, right? So it is working absolutely fine. Now let's see what will happen if I try to add a new value at index 5. We know that in our list, we only have indexes from 0 to 4. And we want to see what will happen if we try to assign a value to index number 5. Let's execute this code and let's see. So if you see, my initial array is printed perfectly fine. So my initial array is printed properly. And then at this particular point, I'm getting an exception which is saying list index out of bounds 5. We have seen this exception in the previous tutorial as well. And this simply means that we don't have an index 5 for our list, right? So this cannot be done. This is not possible because we have only allocated the memory for 5 elements to our list, and this is from index 0 to index 4. But there is one thing that we know, that in Apex, even though we are using the array notation, we are actually creating a list. And in list, we can expand the list size by using the add function, and we can add new elements to the list. So instead of doing this, what I can do, I can use the add function and I can add another element to the list like this. And finally, what I'm doing here, I'm displaying the size of the list and I'm also displaying the new list. So let's do one thing. I'm going to display the size of the list here as well. And then I'm going to display the new list and then the size of the list again, so that we can see what was the initial size and what is the new size. Let's execute this whole code. And if you see right here, now this is what we have. So you can see this is the initial list. Richard Hendricks, Alec Bachman, Kevin Belson, Monica, and Jared. So Jared is at index number 4, which is right here. And I can say size of the list names is equal to 5 because I have 5 elements inside my list. So this is coming perfectly fine. Then I added a new element to the list, which is Dinesh Chuptai. And this element will be added automatically to the end of the list. So it is automatically added to the end of my list. And then what I'm doing, I'm displaying the list of names again. So this list is displayed right here. And then I'm saying size of list names is equal to names.size. I'm using the size function, which we discussed previously, to display the size of my list. And this time it is coming to be 6. So initially the list of size was 5 and now it has increased to 6. Okay. So this is how you can use the array notation to initialize a list and to initialize the elements of our list as well. There can be some other ways to initialize the same list as well. For example, if you do it like this, list of string names is equal to new string 5. So I'm using the RHS or the right hand side from here, and I'm using the left hand side from the previous syntax like we did here. This would also work perfectly fine. So I can execute this whole code just to show you that there are no errors. So if you see, my list is still initialized successfully. Similarly, you can do it like this as well. So I can say string of array names is equal to new list of string. What I'm doing here, I'm using the right hand side from my previous notation and I'm using the left hand side from my new notation. The only catch that we have here is Here we did not specify any size for our list, right? Because we are initializing a new list and we don't have any size for this particular list, right? If you see, at both these places, we defined a list size as 5, but here we don't have a size. So what will happen? If we try to assign a new value at index number 2 or any index in our list, we will get an error. Let's execute this code and it will be more clear to you. So if you see, I'm getting an error at line 2 itself. So this is the line number 2 and it is saying list index out of bounds 2. This means that the index 2 does not exist in our list because this is an empty list. So what we can do in case we initialize a list in this way, we can use the add function to add values to our list. So instead of this, let's say if I do names.add Gavin Belson, then this will work perfectly fine. So let's execute this code. And here if you see, this time I'm going to have a single value in my list, which is Gavin Belson that we added right here. And the size of the list is 1. It is working perfectly fine. Now let's move on to the next part. This is about populating values inside a list at the time of initialization. That means when we are initializing our list, it might be possible that we want to have some initial values automatically populated in our list or present from the very beginning in our list, right? We can also do this by using the curly braces. So what we are doing here, instead of using these parentheses, we are using the curly braces, and inside these curly braces, we are going to specify the values that we want to have inside our list in a comma separated fashion. So we are going to have comma separated values that we want to store inside our list. Let's execute this code and let's see what happens. So if you see, I'm getting initial names is equal to, then we have our list, which is nothing but a names list. So the list name is names that I defined right here. And this list is having two values, SFDC stop and Rahul Malhotra. So it is having two values, SFDC stop and Rahul Malhotra. So this is how you can initialize a list with some initial values. Although if you want to add more values, then again you can use the add function and you can add more values to this list. Similarly, we can use the array notation as well. I'm using the array notation here, string, then square brackets, then names is equal to new string, then square brackets. Then again, I'm using these curly braces and I'm initializing two values for my list. So if I clear the output and if I execute this code, it is going to work in a similar fashion. If you see right here, I have again initialized the same list. So initial names is equal to SFDC stop and Rahul Malhotra. It is coming from here, SFDC stop and Rahul Malhotra. So this is how you can initialize your list with some initial values. And we also saw that how we can use the array notation to work with our list. That's all for this tutorial. I'll see you next time.